In the past couple of years, we have seen black films that have shattered the expectations of what they can achieve in box office. This video takes a closer look at the numbers behind the successes of some of these films. In Hollywood, black films are seen as a risk, but the following films prove that black films have a lot of potential for both domestic and international box office success, and also highlight the financial power of the black community, who are of course a major factor in determining the success of these films. Let's start with Moonlight. There's absolutely no doubt that Moonlight is an international box office success, but it has extremely humble beginnings both in financial investment and the initial release. Moonlight was made on a minuscule production budget of $1.5 million. In all honesty, the reported figure of Moonlight's production budget varies, but the most consistent figure out there is $1.5 million. The highest reported production budget for Moonlight is $4 million, and even if that is the case, it's still a splash in the pond in comparison to what the average production budget is for films that are released at cinema. Just to put these numbers into context, La La Land, the film that was mistakenly awarded the Oscar for Best Picture, had a production budget of $30 million.
This is not a joke. Moonlight has won Best Picture. Moonlight, Best Picture.
Oh, it's fine. I'm sorry.
So whether or not Moonlight had a budget of $1.5 or $4 million, it's a ridiculously small budget, and in fact, Moonlight is currently the lowest budgeted film to ever win an Academy Award. The production budget wasn't the only thing that showed how underestimated the film was. The marketing budget and the release of the film were also modest, to say the least. Moonlight was initially released on 21st October 2016 and was only available in 4 theatres across America. The studio was surprised to discover that, despite its modest release, Moonlight grossed more than $402,000 in its opening weekend. This meant that the average theatre made over $100,000 during the opening weekend alone. Realising that they underestimated the potential of this film, the studio decided to give Moonlight a more respectable release and had a second, wider release date. Nearly a month after the initial release of Moonlight, it was released again on November 18, 2016, but this time it was made available in over 650 theatres, and they made sure to include African American areas this time. In this weekend alone, Moonlight grossed close to $1.5 million, so by this time it had already returned on its initial $1.5 million investment, and the success didn't stop there. In its 25-week release, Moonlight grossed more than $65 million in the worldwide box office. And the truth is, the success of Moonlight is not an anomaly. Black films are routinely given a small budget and over-deliver at box office. As a 20th century production with Pharrell as a producer, Hidden Figures was more fortunate than Moonlight and had a production budget of $25 million. But let's not forget, this is still a modest budget in comparison to the films it was battling at box office. Soon after its wide release on the 6th of January 2017, Hidden Figures topped the box office for 2 consecutive weeks. Being at the top of box office is an achievement in and of itself, but to put this success in context, Hidden Figures was up against several big budgeted films such as Rogue One, a Star Wars story that had a production budget of $200 million, Monster Trucks with a reported budget of $125 million, and Patriots Day, which had a reported budget of $45 million.
It's not fair, that's a fact.
What's not fair is having the responsibility of a supervisor, but not the title or the pay.
Just to add more context to the success of Hidden Figures, Rogue One is of course part of a well-known and successful franchise. It had more financial backing in its production budget, its marketing, and its ability to release. In the same weekend that Hidden Figures beat it to number 1 at box office, Rogue One was released in 4,152 theatres across America, while Hidden Figures was only available in 2,471 theatres. As well as grossing $22.8 million in its first weekend of wide release, holding the top position for 2 weeks ahead of such strong competition solidifies Hidden Figures as a box office success. What's more, in its 45-week release, Hidden Figures grossed a staggering $235.6 million worldwide.
There's no mathematical formula for that.
With all things considered, the success of Hidden Figures sounds like a Hollywood movie in and of itself. Another movie starring black women, another modest production budget, and another box office smash. Girls Trip had a production budget of $19 million. It was released on the 21st of July 2017 and made $31 million at box office in its opening weekend alone. The success of Girls Trip came at a time when R-rated comedies had seen a streak of underperforming at the box office. The House was released on 30th of June 2017. It had a production budget of $40 million and made a disappointing $8.7 million in its opening weekend. Rough Night had a $20 million production budget and again had disappointing results when it was released on June 16th and made $8 million on its opening weekend. Girls Trip broke this disappointing streak of underperforming and also made history in the summer of 2017. Girls Trip is the first black-led film to make more than $100 million at domestic box office. And what black-led means is that it was written, produced, directed and starring African Americans. By the end of its 12-week release, Girls Trip had shattered all limiting expectations and made $139 million worldwide, yet again proving the potential of black-centered films to have commercial success. Get Out shook the public consciousness and gave us an eerie glance into a world that isn't too dissimilar from the world we already live in. The film unashamedly placed black point of views at the centre of the story and subtly spoke on the many ways black bodies are used and appropriated to benefit the white man. Get Out strikingly depicted how the value of black people is often measured on a superficial level and reduces black people to just being cool, being musically gifted and being strong, but never intelligent. Jordan Peele's message was ironically backed up by the shamefully small budget Get Out was given, in the assumption that a movie with a black central character and a black director will not be of great financial reward. Well, how wrong were they? Get Out made history in 2017. It is domestically the highest grossing film ever made by a black filmmaker in US history. Made on an extremely modest production budget of $4.5 million, by the end of its opening weekend, Get Out had grossed $33.3 million at domestic box office. And by the end of its 15-week release, Get Out made an astronomical return of $252.4 million globally, making its return on investment over 630%. We can't speak about the recent success of black films without mentioning the two films that were at the centre of the Oscars So White protest. We know that Straight Outta Compton and Creed were hugely successful, but let's take a quick look at the numbers. Straight Outta Compton marked the beginning in a shift in attitudes towards black film in recent times. Made with a production budget of $28 million, Straight Outta Compton annihilated at box office, making $60 million in its opening weekend and a staggering $201.6 million after a 10-week release. Creed was also a huge success story. It was made with a $35 million budget and made $173.5 internationally after a 14-week release. Despite being snubbed by the Oscars, both films showed us that audiences will turn up in huge numbers to watch films told from black perspectives, with black actors, and through the visions of black directors. Quite often, studios are afraid of investing in black films because they think they will not make a great enough profit in sales outside of America. So let's take a quick look at the numbers and explore if the success of these films hold up in foreign markets. Girls Trip made $23.9 million in the foreign market. Considering it had a budget of $19 million, Girls Trip made a profit on this budget in the overseas market alone. Hidden Figures made $66.2 million outside of the US. Creed made $63.8 million in the foreign markets. Get Out made $78.8 million outside of the US, and Straight Outta Compton made $40.4 million overseas. The most striking example of the success of black films in foreign markets is Moonlight. Moonlight made $65 million at worldwide box office, but only $27.8 million of that was made domestically. Moonlight made $37.1 million in the foreign market, so actually, most of the returns Moonlight made was the result of foreign audiences. So from these numbers, all of the films listed made a handsome profit on the production budget from international sales alone, proving that international appeal is not something studios should be worried about when it comes to black-led films. I can already hear the critics out there saying that the success of these films were not solely the responsibility of the black community, and yes, part of the success is due to the fact that Hollywood often assumes that white audiences won't watch films with black people at the centre of the story. This isn't true, and some white people did watch some of these films, but what made them successful was undoubtedly the African American audience. According to movie revenue tracker Box Office Mojo, the success of Girls Trip in its opening weekend was due to the attendance of African Americans. In fact, it was an overwhelmingly female audience and 59% of them were black, 90% of them were white, 17% were Hispanic and 3% were Asians. So yeah, white audiences did contribute to the success, but it was audiences of colour, and more specifically black and female audiences, who created the success of Girls Trip. While it would be impossible to give the exact number of African Americans that watched each film in this list around the world, it is no coincidence that the Motion Picture Association of America reported that in 2016 alone, the number of white moviegoers declined, while moviegoers of colour saw a dramatic increase. 2016 was a pivotal year for diverse representation in the cinema, and as a result, African Americans showed up to cinemas in huge numbers. The number of frequent African American moviegoers nearly doubled to 5.6 million in 2016. This insight shows a strong correlation with the success of some of the diverse films at box office. And on that note, let's have a quick recap of the groundbreaking success of black films in 2017. Hidden Figures beat Star Wars to #1 at box office and held on to top position for 2 consecutive weeks. Girls Trip is the first black-led film to make more than $100 million at domestic box office. Moonlight is the lowest budgeted film to ever win an Academy Award, and Get Out is domestically the most financially successful film made by a black filmmaker in US history. It is no secret that the black community have long been shut out from opportunities their white counterparts are offered, and this has led to the black community being economically deprived. However, the story we are rarely told is about the collective political and economic power of the black community. The truth is, voting doesn't just happen during an election in the ballot box. We live in a capitalistic system, and every time you spend your money, you are making a political move and casting your vote. These films alone show that when the black community comes together, the economic power and potential for influence cannot be denied. Thanks for tuning in to The Media Mirror, a place where we reflect on race in the media. Hit subscribe below to keep up with all things Media Mirror, and share your thoughts on this video in the comment section below.